as Week 9 is in the books. We're steamrolling ahead to Week 10, double digits of the NFL season. Can you believe it, John? 10 weeks we're entering.
Yeah, and how about that bye week for the Eagles?
Right, they didn't do anything and ended up in fantastic position based on the fact that the two teams in the East lost.
Yeah, not only that, we mentioned all the injuries in Washington, and then sure enough, Sean Lee goes down with the latest hamstring. He's not going to play against the Eagles on Sunday.
They're better off, I think, without him.
I don't know about that. Although they are better equipped, usually, when they've lost him in the past, which was a heck of a lot, because that's the issue with him. He's a really good player. He's just injury prone. They really struggled. Now they have Jalen Smith and Leighton Vander Esch, so they're more equipped to handle it. But you got to be realistic. You got to be honest. He's a really good player.
Oh, he's great. I mean, I think he's great. I think it's unfortunate watching him sometimes that he looks like a guy who's been hurt an awful lot.
Yeah, I mean, he still plays at a high level, but best ability is availability. He's not available a lot, and it just happens at the perfect time for the Eagles. And it's kind of amazing how things have broken for them this week when they're not even on the field. And I kind of thought about it today. Take the Rams and the Saints out of it, the two heavyweights in the NFC. And I'm going to say something right now. The team most likely to make the playoffs and the rest of the group in the NFC is the Philadelphia Eagles.
I guess let's see here real quick. Just doing a quick litmus test here. I guess you got Minnesota, Bears, and Green Bay all bunched up there, so there's not a guarantee. Panthers, 6-2.
Tough division. Got to play the Saints. Got to play the Falcons. They're coming up, playing well again. Look, they're likely to make the playoffs, but because of that division, it makes it tougher. I think the Eagles have a clearer path.
Not an outrageous claim. I do want to touch on Dallas. Some of the things there. Jerry Jones came out and said they're not going to make a change in season, to which I said Eagle fans are rejoicing all over the Delaware Valley that this Garrett guy is going to get to stay. And then he also said that they're extending Dak. So it's more celebration that they get another window that this guy's going to get to play quarterback. I think it's apparent that Jones doesn't want someone to upstage him at the coaching position.
Yeah, and it's been that way for years. So I don't really – I think the bigger issue for them is they don't have a quarterback and they refuse to admit it. At the coaching position, let's be honest, he took Jason Garrett's power away years ago. He doesn't do much to begin with. He doesn't call the offensive plays anymore. He took that away from him. He tells him who to give defensive play calling to, who to hire. So he's always been an extension of Jerry Jones. So, if you were to rate the 32 NFL coaches as far as power goes, he would be near the bottom of the list.
No question. And then Prescott, he has the fumble last night. He has the interception in the end zone. You got to start looking at whether or not he's the right guy. I know he got off to a good start. He was a great story that first year, but the last couple of years, are you extending Dak Prescott? It's tough. You don't have sometimes there's not another option. They're in that situation where they're not going to get a draft choice, so you're kind of in a tough spot. But I don't know.
Yeah, it's difficult for the reason you said. It'd be nice if you had a top 10 pick, but you traded that for Amari Cooper. So who knows? Maybe you can get a quarterback that way. They're in a bad situation because he's not terrible. I don't want to spin it that way, but if you're being real about it, you kind of know he's nowhere near being an elite quarterback. So what do? Do you want average to below average, or how do you find something else? It's tough to find quarterbacks in this league, and the Cowboys are going to figure that out. It's even tougher when you're giving up potential top 10 picks.
At this stage, Dallas or Washington, who's more of a threat?
Neither. That's what I was saying before. Washington would be, but they're crippled on the offensive line. I mean, that's the deal with the Redskins. I thought the Redskins were going to be problematic, even though I kind of intimated that I thought Atlanta was going to win that game. They were still going to be an issue down the stretch of the season. And I thought the two games the Eagles would play against the Redskins would probably tell the tale of who's going to win the NFC East. Now they don't have 80% of their offensive line. And the two guards are out for the season. Trent Williams out for a month probably. We'll see about Morgan Moses, but they're going to be playing offensive linemen they signed off the street. And we've all seen how that works out. If you looked at Dexter McDougal coming off the street trying to play nickelback, that kind of stuff doesn't usually work out too well.
Yeah, and then they lost Richardson, too, who was a team that doesn't have a lot of weapons, a deep threat.
Yeah, I mean, they're not built that way to begin with, but it hurts. No question about it. He is their guy to stretch the field. I mean, they're not a passing team anyway that's going to dominate that way like the Rams or the Saints or somebody like that. So, but anytime you lose a starter and a guy who's important to your offense, it's an issue. You've seen, I mean, Mike Wallace leaving this offense, he basically did nothing when he was out there, but the presence, you can see how it's hurt the Eagles.
And what did Aguilar have to say about yesterday? I know he spoke regarding adding Tate.
Yeah, I mean, he said all the right things. Nelson's a smart guy, but the writing is on the wall. I mean, what he is supposed to do well, Golden Tate actually does well. So it depends how quickly the Eagles can get him up to speed. But you've seen this league, and you saw it last night with Cooper. He was out there. You saw it with Demaryius Thomas. I mean, he's going to play, and he's really a smart player with a high football IQ, Golden Tate I'm talking about. So he's going to become the Eagles' guy when you're in the slot and third down and looking to move the sticks and all the manufactured touches and things like that. He's just better. So it's going to be difficult for Nelson.
Yep, and I'm very interested to see how they work those two guys. If they just say, you know what, Tate, we're going to utilize you in your best spot, the slot, and move Nelson to the outside, or if they're going to say, you know what, Golden, you're probably better equipped to do this than Nelson is, so we're going to try you out there. I think that will be very interesting to see on Sunday night.
Yeah, I mean, the assistant coaches spoke today, so I talked to Gunnar Brewer about that. A lot of people mislabel, and that's the term he used, Golden Tate, because of his size, and he's 5'11". So he looks like a slot receiver, but the majority of his career he's played outside, and he's been very effective. So I think, and as we will see Sunday night, as you mentioned, I think on early downs he'll play outside, and on third downs they'll move him inside. I think they'll try to take advantage of him as much as possible, and he's just a really good player. So he's better outside than Nelson. He's better inside than Nelson. He's just better.
Yeah.
So I think they're going to use him.
The passing game should be a little bit more dynamic with the addition of Tate. We'll see. The offensive line's been an issue. They've had some injury problems. Peters can't stay out in the field, but Lane Johnson, I know Jeff Stoutland spoke today. He almost sounded like he thought Lane Johnson will be ready to play on Sunday.
Yeah, he didn't rule him out, which is pretty amazing. And you remember he already played through that high ankle sprain, and people say that's a 2 to 4 week injury. So he's done it before. Look, if you sprain an MCL and you're a receiver or cornerback, you know you're going to miss some time. But it is a little bit different for an offensive lineman. That's what Aaron Rodgers did, and he played through it at quarterback, which is even more difficult. And we all know how tough Lane Johnson is. So Jeff Stoutland, he didn't guarantee it, but he kind of intimated, hey, don't be surprised if he's out there. And we'll know better tomorrow, the first full-scale practice of the week and the first injury report of the week. I think you'll get a clearer view. Obviously, the way Doug Peterson has handled injuries, he's not going to come out and say anything definitive other than day-to-day or week-to-week. But I got a feeling Lane's going to be in the day-to-day category because he's a tough guy.
Yeah, if he didn't play, it would be Big V at right?
Yeah. He's the swing tackle, and it'll be interesting because if you go back to his rookie season, that's the year Lane had the big suspension, and the Eagles kind of fell apart without him. Vaitai did not play well at right tackle. Not that he's great at left tackle, but he does seem more comfortable on that side, and he was able to persevere as they won the Super Bowl playing left tackle. For whatever reason, he seems to have more of an issue on the right side, so that could be something to keep an eye on, especially with the Cowboys coming in because that's where DeMarcus Lawrence lines up.
Yep, that should be an interesting matchup on that side, and we'll see if Lane Johnson can play. We'll keep our eye on that, and Jason Peters as well. I mean, he's been banged up, so who would be the next option to play? Is that? I mean, they wouldn't play Mailata at right tackle.
You saw what happened against Jacksonville because they had so many issues, and when both left the game, Jason had a potential concussion and left for a while as well. So what happened, they put Vaitai at left tackle, they put Sayamalo, they kicked him out to right tackle, and they put Wiz back in at left guard. So if you need two tackles, it would be Vaitai at left tackle, it would be Sayamalo at right tackle, and then Stefan Wisniewski back at left guard. So, yeah, you're not going to see Jordan Mailata or even Matt Pryor unless it gets down to an emergency situation.
I was going to say, if Vaitai started at right tackle and Peters got hurt, would they then put Mailata in at left tackle and just keep Vaitai at right tackle? Or because they're one of those teams that don't like to move a whole heck of a lot of guys. They're like, one movement is better than three.
Yeah, but they already did it against Jacksonville. They had that exact scenario, and they did it. So you're right. It's generally on the defense. Jim Schwartz talks about moving parts a lot and doesn't like to do it as much as possible. They've proven they'll shuttle guys on the offensive line, and it mainly because they have a lot of confidence in the versatility of both Wiz and Sayamalo. So, yeah, it'll be Isaac. In that situation, they would move Vaitai over to the left side. Isaac, which is, by the way, Vaitai's better position, they put Isaac at right tackle, and they put Wiz. The one thing that I kind of talked about, if Johnson missed a month, which is what the early speculation was, and he's probably not going to miss a month, then I think you sort of have to have the conversation, would you rather start Vaitai at right tackle or Sayamalo and put Wiz at left guard? I think that would be the question, but I don't think they'll have to answer that.
If Sproles is ready to play, any news of whether or not he's getting closer after yesterday, but if he's ready to play, do you anticipate that he kind of becomes their most trusted guy?
Yeah, running back, yeah, I do, because it's always been that way. Now, people forget because he hasn't been around for so long. Got injured in week 3 last year, played one game this year. So you got to go all the way back to 2016, Doug's first year. He trusts him more than the other backs, and that's when they had more proven guys. Now it's Wendell Smallwood. So, yeah, I mean, if Darren Sproles is available in key situations, there's absolutely no question the Eagles are going to default to Darren Sproles. And I talked to Dave Phipp today, and he basically, hey, when Darren's back, he's the punt returner as well. So, I mean, this team has tremendous confidence in Darren Sproles. It's just he hasn't been able to get on the field.
Yeah. Do you anticipate that he will get on the field this week?
I do. I think they were waiting for the bye week. Similar to Lane, we'll know more tomorrow at practice. I expect him to be back at practice. I think they were waiting for that extra week, and I think he'll be back. If he's not back, then you got a real issue because something's going on.
Right. Like, have you seen him at all? Like, is he around?
No, he doesn't come in. The injured players don't have to talk, and they generally don't come in the locker room. I've seen him walking, here and there at the NovaCare complex. He tends not to talk that much. And when he is healthy, he's had some stuttering issues and is very uncomfortable with the microphones. But, he's been around.
Except for in that Geico commercial.
and he's been rehabbing, and we'll see. I think tomorrow's key because if he's still not able to practice, it's certainly more than a hamstring strain. It's probably a torn hamstring. And Doug insists. We asked him that specifically, and he said no. It's nothing more than a typical hamstring. If he's not at practice tomorrow, it's more.
By the way,
there's no question.
It's not Geico. It's a Cure Auto. I think he's in the Cure Auto commercial. Every time I see that commercial, I'm thinking to myself, who from Cure Auto said, you know what? Let's handpick Darren Sproles to be the spokesman for Cure Auto. I mean, the one guy who wants nothing to do with being on the microphone. Let's pick him and stick him at the podium for our commercial. But I digress on that one. But let me ask you about that, because do you think that maybe he has been healthier, but they're just kind of saying, you know what, rest it up. We need you for the second half of the year. Could there be a element of that they were kind of seeing the way the season was going and saying, hey, as long as we get to that bye week and we're still in this thing, we're good?
I think as it got closer to the bye week, that is sort of what happened. And they said, well, we'll just persevere and give him the extra week, and we'll have him for the second half of the season. I think that's the strategy. The Eagles have been very clandestine when it comes to injuries as a whole this season. So it's difficult to get their exact thinking, but whether it's on the record, off the record, nobody will admit anything more than a hamstring strain for Darren Sproles. So I have to take him at their word. And if that's the truth, he'll be at practice tomorrow. It's as simple as that.
Right. So tune in 4 o'clock tomorrow to find out whether or not we see Darren Sproles back at practice for the Eagles. Big addition there. They got Golden Tate. So do we feel like we keep having this conversation on the show about the offense versus the defense? And, I say, look, the defense is giving up 19.5 points. That should be enough to win football games. Their offense is scoring 22. Last year they scored 28. That's a 6-point difference. Is it as simple as that to you, that adding a couple of pieces on the offense should get them closer to that 28? Can they get 6 more points a game?
Well, I don't know if they can get 6 more points a game right away. I think the potential is there with adding Golden Tate. It was clear they understood they needed a playmaker. But I do think Darren is very important as well because, look, I mean, there's nobody in this backfield right now that's going to strike fear into people. And that, even though Darren Sproles is aging and small and he's not a bell cow back, it will, even just the presence. We talk about presence a lot. Nobody's scared of Wendell Smallwood. Nobody's scared of Corey Clement. Nobody's scared of Josh Adams. So that hurts the other parts of the offense. But I do think anytime you had a playmaker like Golden Tate, things have to get better. Now you have 3 guys with Tate and Jeffrey and Ertz. So I do think you're going to see improvement.
Let me ask you, as we get to we're at the halfway point here, where has there been guys who played last year that have not equaled the production they had a year ago. Let's start on defense.
There's a lot. There's a lot, and that's been one of the big issues. There's different phases, like Jason Kelce. I mean, Jason Kelce was the best center in football last year. He's the best center in football this year, but he's not as good this year as last year. So there's a sliding scale. He's still as good as it gets. He's just not as good as he was. Same with Lane Johnson. He's not as good as he was. Then you talk about the guys who've fallen off dramatically. That's your Nelson Aguilars. That's your Jake Elliott's types who had career years and have just not been able to back that up. So there's a lot on both sides of the football. Defensively, Nigel Bradham has not played as well. Malcolm Jenkins is sort of in that same Jason Kelce conversation. He's still good. He's still really good, but he's not as good as he was last year. And Jalen Mills would be in the Nelson Aguilar conversation. As somebody who's a Pro Bowl alternate, and now he hasn't even been an average corner in the NFL. So I remember telling you that way back in the offseason, Mike. There was going to be an issue because so many guys had career years. It's really difficult to do that in back-to-back years.
Yeah, and I think another thing is, I think one thing that's not been talked about enough, the difference between this year to last year and a guy like Nigel Bradham, the tackling has been worse. They were a great tackling team last year, John, and I remember they lost the Seahawks game, and the reason why we lost, we came in on Monday and said, man, they tackled all season long, and that game up in Seattle, they just didn't tackle. And then they didn't tackle the next week against the Rams, and were able to win that game, but they gave up 38 points in doing so. Last year, that team tackled you. This team does not tackle you the way they did last year.
Well, they haven't been as good in the secondary, certainly, but you have to look at what's going on. Rodney McLeod's not there. Patrick Robinson's not there. All of a sudden, you have a rookie changing positions and playing safety, and he made a big play against Jacksonville. I mean, that arguably Vontae Maddox turned the game around. Sidney Jones, before he got hurt, he's not Patrick Robinson as far as tackling goes. So that enters into it. But I think as I heard you talking about Robert Covington when I was driving, and this has been my theme of the year for the Philadelphia fans, is context. You got to put context on it. And if you watch other games, and people should have watched other games because the Eagles were on a bye, compare the Eagles' defense to everybody else. It's not that bad. I've been saying it all year. And
I agree with you. I've been agreeing with you on the defense. I put very little blame on the like. I could say, yeah, they should have made plays in the games that they lost 7. They blew those leads, but in the end, if you give up 19 points a game, they should be 6-2 with that. With those that I said, L.A. Rams give up 19.4. You give up 19.5. They were 8-0. You were 4-4. That's an offense problem.
Yeah, I agree. More offense than defense, and the league as a whole, it's just hard to play defense. And you saw the Rams playing the Saints, and vice versa. Nobody could stop anybody.
Yeah.
And that's just what this league is today. So there are going to be times. Now, you're right. If you want to criticize them for 4th and 15 and big plays like that, yeah, they deserve criticism. But as a whole, it hasn't been that bad on the defensive side of the ball, especially when you factor in the injuries. Offensive side of the ball has been more uneven, and a lot of that has to do with injuries. But I think the defense has been closer to what we expected than the offense.
John McMullen back tomorrow at JF McMullen on Twitter. Give him a follow there. More on the Eagles and Cowboys Sunday night. It's right here on 97.3 ESPN. Thanks, John.
Thanks, Mike.